and blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning. KIDO Talk Radio, phone numbers 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Coming up, Miller's Mission next week. We need your pennies, we need your dollars, we need your cents to help the Boise Rescue Mission. All you have to do, go to KIDOTalkRadio.com, or if you'd like more information about our friends, our partners at the Boise Rescue Mission, to find out how they help Treasure Valley families, they help people getting off of the drugs, they help veterans get back on the feet, all without government funding. All you have to do is go to boiserm.org, and we would love for you to help us. By the way, if you're not familiar with Miller's Mission, this is where we ask you to share our social media posts on this. We've got a few right now on KIDOTalkRadio.com, on our Facebook, and the Kevin Miller Show and Kevin Miller, where people come by. Some people like Gregor Keith dress up as Darth Vader to give. So won't you help us help the Boise Rescue Mission? Be a part of the Penny Patrol Miller's Mission, rolling right now. We start again next week. We'll be at the Walmart in Nampa, Garrity and Franklin. We would love for you to stop by and donate, right? Joining us now, it's been a while since we've had this young man back on, Noah Rothman, author of Unjust, Social Justice, and the Unmaking of America. Welcome back, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. The state of America today, if you're not writing about it in your new book or in Commentary Magazine or commenting on all the shows where you're usually outgunned, where are we today? Has social media really just pumped up a lot of unresolved issues, or is it all hyperbole? It's just all smoke, no fire?
You know, I think there's probably an element of truth to both those statements. There maybe is something of a middle ground there. True to form, I'm going to strike for the middle ground, in which perhaps a lot of the fractious and disunion that we see on social media is a little bit exaggerated, in part because it's a self-selected community that rewards hyperbole and rewards that kind of combative discourse. But at the same time, these issues aren't invented, aren't drawn from whole cloth. They do exist, and in part, the book that I write and address is about these issues is the extent to which they are real and legitimate, fractious conflicts involving identity and historical grievances addressed in the public sector, in the public sphere, and in private enterprise, and the extent to which there are legitimate and valid grievances and constructive ways to address them in the public sphere, and illegitimate grievances and very unconstructive pathways to seek redress and reconciliation. And this book is about those illegitimate grievances and the very unproductive method by which we seek to achieve some sort of reconciliation there. And that is usually addressed in the social media crowd, both on the left and on the right, through retribution, through downward negative social leveling. These are not new ideas. This has been around for a long time. They're only just recently gaining some new cachet. As a new generation that's unfamiliar with history and literature becomes familiar with these ideas and finds them attractive. And the arguments in this book, while not new, are nevertheless very valid and hopefully will address this crisis in the public consciousness before it becomes something that's irreversible.
Well, aren't we relitigating the lessons of the past? And, you know, in your latest piece in Commentary, you mentioned, Stacey Abrams comparing her to O'Rourke and how it's unfair, this, that, and the other. I mean, you're a writer, you're a commentator. You can explain it more than I can when we talk about, well, it's not fair that because Beto O'Rourke is of this race, and as you touched on before, identity politics, and Stacey Abrams is of this race, it's also unfair. In other words, special treatment or the lack thereof.
Well, so as I said in the earlier segment there, I think that there are constructive methods by which you can, well, as a conservative, I'm hostile towards the notion of, for example, positive social leveling based on race, discriminatory behaviors by public sector enterprises, by demographic categories, because it's discriminatory inherently. But there is something psychologically more valuable there, seeing an individual as an individual with individual mitigating circumstances that should avail them of different opportunities that they may not have had access to through no fault of their own. And another way of looking at this, which is seeing individuals not as individuals, but as collective representatives of a tribe or a class, some of whom are due a comeuppance That is the form in which modern social justice activism has taken. It has taken the form of negative social leveling, seeing individuals as members of a collective, and particularly of singling out individuals who are perceived to have benefited from historical conditions of which they may not even be aware, and to correct for those conditions through the creation of obstacles and downward social pressure. And there's something very psychologically damaging there, in part because American institutions cannot deliver that sort of justice. They're simply not designed to mete out that kind of collective retribution. So in part, you're seeing yourself as this lost figure trying to navigate a labyrinth of prejudices and seeking a social remedy that's just not going to be forthcoming. And that can make you very despondent, or radicalized. It can make you radicalized and resolve to attack the foundations of these institutions that you decided are so immoral and unjust.
Noah Rothman joining us, Unjust Social Justice and the Unmaking of America. Kevin Miller with you on KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. So we go back to, and this, I think, plays into the theme of your book, where we have Stacey Abrams telling people that they won in Georgia even though they lost, and making allegations of voter suppression. And you don't have to be a person that's on television as much as you, Mr. Rothman, to know that, people float those theories. Credible people in media, are quoted, well, we know what went on in Georgia. Well, she lost in Georgia. Yet, back to your point, the unmaking of America, are we seeing that? Are we hearing that with, just as one example, the Abrams situation?
It's very strange, in part because we have a model to show how the press responds when unfounded allegations of voter fraud and voter suppression are made, because in 2016, it was Donald Trump who was making them. He was preemptively trying to discredit the election results when he was presumably going to lose, saying that there was voter fraud and that there were illegal immigrants. Even after he won, there were illegal immigrants tainting the vote in places like Virginia and California. And the press treated this with a lot of disdain, notably because, in the words of the Atlantic's David Graham, there was no evidence for them, which is true. Stacey Abrams has similarly acknowledged that she, quote, has no empirical evidence that I would have achieved a higher number of votes than Brian Kemp. But her allegations are not being treated as though they're spurious and they lack some sort of evidentiary threshold, but they simply do not. Brian Kemp won a 50,000 vote victory, larger than any other vote that has ever been overturned in a recount. There was a 16-point surge in the number of African Americans in Georgia who voted. According to the Brookings Institution fellow William Frey, whose observation was that in 2018, the, quote, black voter turnout of 60% exceeded the turnout in the 2016 presidential election by 1%. That's staggering for a midterm election. The Stacey Abrams campaign says that, there were a bunch of these poll closures over the course of 2012 to 2018, and Brian Kemp was the architect of that. That's simply not true. These decisions are made at a local level. In fact, Secretary Kemp at the time was opposed to some of the more controversial closings, most of which are done by virtue of a cost-benefit analysis, because some of these polling places are underutilized and what have you. It's just that there's a number of discrepancies with this case that Stacey Abrams is trying to make, and the evidence that we have before us are such that you would think that a competent media structure would have the guts to say, you don't have any evidence to support this. This is a lie. In fact, it's a really dangerous lie, because according to what we heard in 2016 when Donald Trump was making these allegations, it delegitimizes an election, it alienates the populace, and it can even be a logic for insurrectionary violence. But you're not seeing any of that with Stacey Abrams. And I think in part there's a reason for that, and it's probably because of a concern that a valid and genuine and righteous concern, frankly, on the part of members of the press, that African Americans have been historically discriminated against, and so we should assume discrimination even if no such evidence exists, even if it's only to preserve the feelings of those who perceive themselves to be discriminated against. That's a compromise, an intellectual and moral compromise, and one that I'm not willing to make.
Noah Rothman joining us, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio, Unjust Social Justice and the Unmaking of America, his new book. So when you have Jerry Nadler and Nancy Pelosi saying we're in a constitutional crisis, are they attacking the very institutions they've been sworn to defend?
Yeah, I mean, there's no evidence for that either. The Democrats are facing a political crisis. It's not a constitutional crisis. The Trump administration is stretching constitutional norms by failing to abide by its responsibilities with the implied powers of the legislative branch to execute oversight over the executive branch. They're not cooperating. And that's dangerous, frankly. I think it's reckless, and they are inviting impeachment. But impeachment is a remedy in the Constitution. So it's not a constitutional crisis if the Constitution spells out exactly what is supposed to happen here. It's just that Nancy Pelosi, for very sound political reasons, doesn't want to pull the trigger on that. And she's right not to. It's fraught and dangerous. But that's not a constitutional crisis. It's a political crisis. And there's something very reckless in trying to blame the Constitution for your current predicament, because it could turn against the Constitution when that is wholly and utterly undeserved.
And finally, for Noah Rothman, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. For people that may watch you on Tucker Carlson or MSNBC, or read you in Commentary Magazine, or your new book, Unjust Social Justice and the Unmaking of America. You love radio. You got your start in radio, and you used radio. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but while in radio, you reinvented yourself to where you are today. Can you talk a little bit about changing careers and how much talk radio has meant to you?
Thanks. Yeah, talk radio was my one of my first loves. So when I was in undergrad in 2000, and well, I think, I was a fan of talk radio in 2000. In 2001, 9/11 happened. I was a sophomore in college, and I was glued to the radio and the news, like just about everybody else was, listening late nights to a show called John Batchelor and Paul Alexander Nights in New York City. And I loved it so much that I wanted to get in the building. And eventually I managed to work my way over there and stayed there for 4 years and produced News Talk Radio up until I was in my mid-20s. And the business began to shrink at that point because there was just a crunch in advertising, and it was difficult for talk radio stations to stay on the air. And so I ended up going back to school and got a degree in international relations and public affairs, and focusing on the former Soviet space, actually. And then worked my way back into commentary, and I wanted to do what I was doing now, which is writing. But talk radio will always be my first love. And yeah, so now that I have the opportunity to sit in front of a camera once in a while, which is a true joy, it is the extent to which I'm exercising my first love, sitting behind a microphone. So yes, talk radio is very formative for me.
The old Batchelor and Alexander show. Mr. Rothman, we appreciate you, sir.
Thank you very much.
There we have it. Noah Rothman joining us. You're listening to Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. We would love for you to share our social media posts on Miller's Mission. Coming up Monday, we'll be living at the Walmart in Nampa, Garrity, and Franklin, looking for people to pledge their pennies, pledge their dollars, their cents, to make a difference. This year, we're calling it the Penny Patrol, Pennies from Heaven, and we'll be collecting your pennies. And I want to thank Trina. We're going to go see Trina very, very soon, to Trina's cleaning service in Nampa, for her donation to the Boise Rescue Mission. If you'd like to be involved and collect and then come by and talk about it on the show next week, you can email me, Kevin@KIDOTalkRadio.com. You don't have to write that down. You can just go to our website and click the link right there. You'll find my email. And if you'd like to help our friends at the Boise Rescue Mission directly, BoiseRM.org. A lot going on today. Most notably, this trade war that is happening. Before that, though, Joe Biden is upset. If you haven't heard, maybe you haven't been listening to Sean Hannity in the afternoons, or our friend Lars Larson, when they've been describing Joe Biden and Joe Biden's son and the Ukraine. And Joe Biden is very upset about this. It should be hands off his departed son. Now, if that's the case, look at what they've been doing to John Jr., Eric Trump, and Ivanka. Now, these are serious allegations that Biden's kid benefited big time from the Ukraine. Let's take a listen to Smokin' Sleepy Joe replying.
Like bullies.
Joe Biden is on a mission to make Donald Trump a one-term president. The former vice president kicked off his primary in Hampton, hammering home his campaign theme that in 2020, the soul of America is at stake.
This election is bigger than any you've been engaged in. Not because I'm running or anybody else is running, because who occupies the office. This election is, quite frankly, bigger than politics.
But Biden did address some of the politics of this race in a one-on-one interview with News 9, responding to news that Rudy Giuliani, the president's lawyer, was planning a trip to Ukraine to encourage officials there to reopen an investigation into a gas company that had worked with Biden's son, Hunter.
It is inappropriate. Unrelated to me. It's just inappropriate to send your lawyer to a foreign government to try to get them to do something that has no merit except to embarrass, try to embarrass.
The 76-year-old Biden also told us he will release his medical records, but not until the general election.
The main thing I can say is just watch me.
And there we have it, Joe Biden. Joe Biden saying it's inappropriate to look into his family's dealing. Now, thankfully, and if you missed it, this proves that I don't have a life and I'm working for you all the time. Now, most people are saying working is a little different. Your idea of work, some people's idea of work, building trusses, framing, working, security, working law enforcement, working, right? Where you have 8 to 10 to 12 hours where your life is not your own. So for me, working is watching the shows on Sunday. And I caught this from this week with George Stephanopoulos, and Senator Paul breaks down what Joe Biden's kid is accused of that no one is looking into. Now, remember, let's go back to the 2 or 3 years of allegations, unsubstantiated, derogatory speculation about President Trump and his kids. Let's take a look at how this compares to Joe Biden's kid.
Senator Paul, thanks for joining us this morning. Let me pick up where Chairman Schiff Good morning. Where Chairman Schiff just left off right there.
Now, by the way, this is wonderful because Senator Paul doesn't answer his question. He goes a full Biden with ABC. I had to watch this like 5 times to try and figure this out. He just ignores Stephanopoulos and goes.
That perhaps Congress should consider making it illegal to engage foreign governments, foreign assistance in campaigns. You agree?
Well, I think the American people will be shocked and dismayed to know that Joe Biden's son was making $50,000 a month just a couple of months after he was dishonorably discharged from the military for drugs. $50,000 a month. I think most Americans will be dismayed that the president's son was doing this while Joe Biden was actually lobbying to have this company go free of prosecution. My understanding, this is reported in the New York Times, Joe Biden was asking the prosecutor to lay off of the company that Hunter Biden was working for $50,000 a month. The guy just got kicked out of the military. That's extraordinary.
That's not what was reported. In fact, he was on an anti-corruption drive.
That's exactly what was reported, yes, that he got $50,000 a month right after he was kicked out of the military.
Now, imagine if this had been the Trumps. This has gone unreported. $50,000 a month. Sleepy Joe comes in to try and save his kid, which every father, every family person would do. To me, $50,000 a month from the Ukraine is pretty substantial. There are financial records. The beloved liberal icon, the New York Times, reporting this, and yet, well, we're not going to talk about that. We're going to make something up about Trump and Putin. This is what we're up against. KIDO Talk Radio Time, 8:26. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave. And let's break it down a little further. Going back to what Senator Paul said, the New York Times reported last week that while Vice President Biden threatened to withhold U.S. loan guarantees to the Ukraine if its leaders did not dismiss the country's top prosecutor, his son Hunter was a member of the board of a Ukrainian energy company owned by an oligarch under investigation by the same state prosecutor. That's not collusion. That's not obstruction. That's not, messing with folks. And yet Joe Biden, because people believe that he can win, is up by 30, 35 points against crazy Bernie and everybody else with the Democrats. But why aren't we hearing about the Biden stuff, right? Why aren't we hearing about this? And Joe Biden, who makes a lot of mistakes. Donald Trump, the president, is onto something. The president really is onto something when you're looking at this. He believes that Biden is the most beatable. And if you've got these allegations that the New York Times is reporting, I would agree with him on that. But it shows you the crazy, wacky, devious, liberal double standard when it comes to the news. There is no fairness. Journalism is over. And some people get touchy-feely in their ivory journalistic towers by saying, well, I hate it when we're attacked. Then tell the truth. Tell the truth in Idaho. Tell the truth in the Treasure Valley. Tell the truth when it comes to reporting a story and not just the one-sided, devious little liberal lies that we see. Right? Here you have Joe Biden's kid getting $50,000 a month. Imagine if that were Eric Trump, Donald Trump Jr., Ivanka Trump, Jared Kushner, Chris Christie, Rudy Giuliani. Sounds like he did the same thing that Paul Manafort did. Paul Manafort got life. Now Joe Biden says that's unfair. Now Rudy Giuliani has said he will not go to the Ukraine to investigate, but the point has been made. If you're going to go after people's families, then what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Coming up next, war. Of course, we hear this all the time. We've been talking about this. 120,000 troops could be going to the Persian Gulf. To Iraq? No. To pay back the Ayatollah. Details next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Good morning, Maggie. Blessed to be with you, Kevin Miller in the morning, reminding you Miller's mission begins Monday, but we'd love for you to begin to collect your coins, your change, your dollars, your cents, your pennies, and join our penny patrol. We'll be collecting pennies. Stop by the Nampa Walmart. Garrity and Franklin, beginning next Monday at 6 a.m., we'll be collecting pennies to make a big difference in the lives of kids, veterans, and everyone else associated with our friends at the Boise Rescue Mission. Really looking forward to the spring edition of Miller's Mission. We live there at the Walmart. That's right. We live there at the Walmart from Monday through Saturday. So you can stop by. We'll be rolling from 5 a.m. till 7 p.m. Then we get a little sleep thanks to our friends at Team Mazda Subaru, Camping World, and the Boise Rescue Mission. Joining us now from the White House, from Fox News Radio on KIDO Talk Radio, our great friend John Decker. Good morning, sir.
Hey, Kevin. How are you doing today?
Not bad. Everybody's talking China and its impact on our markets, and surely I'm sure everybody at the White House has China on their mind, sir.
And it's on the mind of the president. He's been tweeting about it all morning. And the reason being, of course, is because yesterday China announced retaliatory tariffs on $60 billion of American products. That would go into effect on June the 1st, and the president announcing that he would be meeting with his counterpart from China, President Xi, in late June at the G20 summit. But the hope is that this trade disagreement, this trade war, can get resolved much sooner than that, before the G20 summit takes place in late June.
We take a look at the president, and he is holding fast on this deal. Does he have congressional support?
Well, interestingly enough, sometimes politics makes for some strange bedfellows, and Chuck Schumer, the Senate Minority Leader, is urging the president to hold firm against China. So there's some bipartisan support in terms of the president's actions. Now, yesterday we saw that Wall Street, the financial markets, certainly didn't like some of the things coming out from the White House. That's the reason why the Dow fell 600 points yesterday. But I think that they noticed some more positive, upbeat, optimistic comments coming from the president in the past 24 hours, and that's the reason why financial markets are up about 200 points this morning.
Which is good news considering the way the Dow took a hit yesterday.
Well, that's exactly right. And so this is something that the president is going to be leading within the next half hour or so. That you may hear some noise behind me in the background. We're waiting to go outside the South Lawn. And the president will likely be asked quite a few questions about the ongoing trade dispute that exists between the U.S. and China.
Well, John, we're going to let you roll. We always appreciate, I know you'll speak as long as necessary, but we respect you. Got to get ready for the president.
Oh, thanks a lot. Always a pleasure, as you know, Kevin, talking to you, and thanks for letting me go. I appreciate it. We'll talk real soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, Kevin. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. There we have it. John Decker getting ready to interview the president. And again, thanks to Fox News Radio and your home for Fox News Radio, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. We appreciate the access that Mr. Decker gives us each and every morning. So we didn't get to talk to John about the Persian Gulf, but it is very, very troubling. What we're seeing today, of course, some people are speculating that war could be on the horizon. We don't know if that's going to happen or not, but certainly people are talking about North Korea and Iran.
Until Iran stops supporting Hezbollah and other terrorist organizations in the region, until it stops sowing violence in places like Yemen and elsewhere, that we're going to continue to stand firm. We've been monitoring very closely the series of missile launches by North Korea and evaluating what that means. Look, the one thing the American people can be confident of is that we will not repeat the mistakes of the past. Our objective is to achieve the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. We're going to continue to stand strong on sanctions and enforcing sanctions, working with our allies in the region. But President Trump really believes that Chairman Kim wants to negotiate. When they embrace a future without nuclear weapons, the president will continue to make it clear, allies will, that there is a brighter future for all the people of North Korea. But we'll continue to stand firm until they choose that future without nuclear weapons.
Boy, that's a heavy lift. Let's get to your calls on this. When we're talking about the Korean Peninsula, when we're talking about the Persian Gulf, and we're talking about 20 to 40 years of just bad foreign policy. We see that with China. We see that with North Korea, where all the previous presidents did was kick the can down the road. And definitely we've seen it with the crazy, wacky, zany mullahs of Iran who have backed Hezbollah, who have backed Hamas. The media doesn't report that. The vice president is right. Iran has backed terrorist organizations that have killed Americans for years, and we do nothing about it. Well, we shall see how it plays out as the tensions continue to grow in the region.
Until Iran stops supporting Hezbollah and other terrorist organizations in the region, until it stops sowing violence in places like Yemen and elsewhere, that we're going to continue to stand firm with what really is a new alignment across the region.
Well, as a former boss of mine liked to say, I guess you could say he's still my boss. Is the juice worth the squeeze? British Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt told KIDO Talk Radio.
I think there's a real concern that escalation that is unintended could end up with a much more serious situation than we're fearing, yes.
Duh. What do you expect? They're attacking Israel. They're attacking Saudi Arabia. We're just going to sit there and hold hands and ask them for a Coke? Pro-Life joins us now. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Hello, Pro-Life.
Good morning. You know, Joe Biden, if he didn't have something embarrassing about his family, he'd have said, hey, just go on over there and investigate all you can, and you'll be the people that'll be embarrassed because we've not done anything wrong. And Trump kind of took that position, you know, on collusion with Russia, and it's proved that he's right. He could have shut it down originally, and I thought he should. Not even should have dismissed the special counsel, but special investigators. But anyway, Biden's are big liars, and it's pretty obvious. I mean, you know, how can you be around Hillary and Obama and all those kind of people and just be real straight? You know, you're not. And so I want to make a comment about Middleton. I really thought the city council in Middleton did the wrong thing, because when the mayor allegedly harmed his wife, that was just allegedly, and then they wanted him to resign right then. That is really pretty bad politics, bad policy, bad judgment, I think, on the city council. And you don't hear anybody saying that. Now, I don't know just what happened between the man and his wife, and one of them, but neither one of them seem like they're going to speak up and accuse the other one of doing something wrong, because now the charges are dropped. But in Middleton, there must be some group that is very contentious and trying to get rid of whoever they want to get rid of and have some kind of power. And they need to find those people and shut them down, because
well, I'm confused. I'm confused with what's going on in Middleton. You got the mayor who was charged, then the charges were dismissed. The city council that wanted the mayor to leave. He says he's not leaving. He's not running for re-election. You got the teachers in the elementary school, the middle school that were photographed with the pictures. They were vilified. It was supposed to be a bonding exercise. They were following directions. You got the astronaut coming in, lecturing them about being bad teachers and being, they should be overly sensitive. Then we have in Middleton, it continues, trying to keep everybody abreast. You have the principal who gets the boot, and then you have the students saying, we don't want the principal to get the boot. He's a good principal. And then don't forget in Star, you've got the middle school teacher or principal and his wife charged with neglect and abuse of children.
Yeah, I know. It's I don't know about the Star thing, but in Middleton.
Boy, that seems like a crazy area, that Star Middleton area.
well, there's some kind of contentious group of people that are blowing stuff up. I mean, the thing that had to do with the people playing like Mexicans and having that fake wall and stuff, that was so stupid that whoever complained about that, and I suppose it came out of Middleton, those people need to be shut down. And so it's the people within Middleton, they have some contentious people there that they need to rein in, and they need to find out who they are, and they need to have them exposed. I think people are generally too wimpy and don't have courage to stand up, and so they're letting somebody get by just accusing everybody of all kinds of stuff. That's what I think in Middleton. So anyway.
All right. Thanks for the update on Middleton.
All right. We'll see you.
Thank you. From Middleton to China. Max, Garden City, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Max.
Good morning, Kevin. You know, I'm looking at the Chinese negotiations, and I don't have a crystal ball, but I could have told you exactly how they were going to proceed. I knew for an absolute fact that they were going to come to a point of agreement and then suddenly back out. That is a tactic used by the Chinese. When America bargains and negotiates, we've always been ridiculously nearsighted. The Chinese play the long game. They're playing a 10-year plan, always a signatory 10-year plan. And that plan plans well beyond Mr. Trump or whoever brings him to the Oval Office 4 years later. They're planning for it. They're ready for it. I'm sure Trump must have expected it, and if he didn't, he needs to read books too. Paper Dragon. The Chinese even have a name for this technique. It's Kung Shui, and it's used all the time. I've seen it in business negotiations. I've seen it within the party itself. Party members vying for an edge within the Communist Party use the exact same technique. China has enough cash on hand, enough backup money, enough backup reserve that they can survive pretty much any tariffs until President Trump gets reelected and then loses to another president because he has to step down. They're planning for this. We're not putting the right kind of pressure on China. That's the problem. You can't put the immediate economic pressure on them. There are other ways. There are services and technologies and personnel that we could take from them that's not in their plan. And they would not know what to do about it. Just a thought, you know. And as far as Middleton, the town of Middleton is living proof that by and large their citizens, all of their citizens, are mind-numbed, stupid, and lazy. To let so much go on.
Wait a minute, you just said that about the citizens of Middleton?
Yes.
That's painting with a broad brush there, buddy.
Okay, if the citizens of Middleton had any get up and go, had any gumption, had any cojones, they would be complaining en masse. The politicians over there are saying, we can do whatever we want. Let's go crazy. The citizens are going to sit on their keisters. They're not going to do anything about it. And guess what? They're not. A student petition? Get real. That means zip. They'll laugh that off over a coffee. You need some civil disobedience, and you need an absolute knowledge that people are going to get recalled. City council members, school board members, but they're not being recalled because as long as it doesn't interrupt the citizens' way of life, as long as they can put gas in the tank, they just don't care. That, my friend, is sad. That's like the Chinese people. They just don't care. As long as they have rice in their bowl and gas in their tank, they're just the same way. I'm seeing this creeping apathy, and it bothers me. We don't have a concerned citizenry anymore. We got a bunch of whiners, a bunch of snowflakes, a bunch of, oh, well, you know, I know it's wrong, by golly. And all they do is talk on the radio. All they do is think about it. I do far more than that. You email, you telephone, you go down to the State House, and you corner these punks coming in and out of the door. That's what people need to do. It's not the total answer, but it's sure a lot more than we see now. And
Max says
Kevin,
he will not be running for anything in Middleton anytime soon.
No, if I ran for anything in Middleton, it'd be the official executioner of public authorities. Have you received my offer on the email?
Oh, yes, I have.
All right, just yes or no. Let me know.
I will.
Well, I need to know as soon as possible so I can get the publisher in. She's ready to go, and we got to kick up a couple hundred books, bring them back over.
Couple hundred books? How many books are you thinking you're going to sell?
I would think we could sell 100.
Oh, we'll see about that. All right, Max.
You take care, buddy.
God bless our great friend Max. Sorry to cut you off there quickly. Coming up next, the Attorney General appoints an attorney to examine the origins of the Trump-Russia investigation. It's about time. What do you have to say about it? 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio.
Good morning. The decision to order this major show of force in the Persian Gulf and to issue explicit threats against Iran was made over the weekend, and it raises the long-simmering feud with Iran to a new level of confrontation.
The aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln and Air Force bombers are being deployed to the Persian Gulf after U.S. intelligence began picking up warnings that Iran was making plans to attack Americans both at sea and on land, including U.S. troops in Iraq. Tensions have been rising since the United States declared the Iranian Revolutionary Guards a foreign terrorist organization last month.
The Iranian regime's use of terrorism as a tool of statecraft makes it fundamentally different from any other government.
And last week, the U.S. announced new economic sanctions designed to shut off all Iranian oil exports, which the administration says accounts for 40% of the regime's revenue.
Iran is a rogue regime. It has been a threat throughout the Middle East.
It's part of what the Trump administration calls an unprecedented maximum pressure campaign, which began a year ago when President Trump pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal.
We will not allow a regime that chants death to America to gain access to the most deadly weapons on earth.
I am responsible for foreign policy.
Last month, Iran's foreign minister told Face the Nation he thought President Trump was being pushed towards a conflict by his advisors and allies.
I think the U.S. administration is putting things in place for accidents to happen.
There we have it, accidents to happen, like terrorist attacks. By the way, thanks to CBS This Morning for that clip. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Our time is 8:56, just a few more minutes before Glenn Beck. But, you know, the Iranian regime is a rogue regime. It has been that way for quite some time. And now you have the crazy, wacky, zany liberal media folks actually backing Iran. You got to laugh. It's too early to be upset. We'll give you the details next. First, traffic and weather together. KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave. You know, we don't have time to give you that story where actually NBC News is backing the Iranians and saying that the president is causing problems. This from a regime that has openly backed terrorism. This from a regime that calls us the great Satan. You know, it's so easy to get distraught. It's so easy to sit back and take a look at things. You know, I think, truthfully, America's a good place. You have Jamil Hill, who used to work at ESPN before she was shown the door, saying that President Trump fulfills the dreams of the white supremacists. You don't have to be a person that watches Black Klansmen to see the subtle messages there. You don't have to be someone who sees Representative Tlaib, the first Palestinian American elected to Congress, saying her thoughts about the Holocaust and how Palestinians provided a place for Israel. Tell that to the Israelis. But unlike the negative Nellies, unlike the evildoers, we do believe in America. And by the way, Joanna, I'm not bashing Middleton. I'm just reflecting what's going on there. There's some crazy things going on in Middleton. Somebody needs to get a handle on that. We're not bashing. Middleton's a great place right down the road from where I live. But when you have all these things going on, there's some issues there that need to be resolved. Hopefully the adults will take care of that in the room. But back to my point, it's so easy, and that's what they want us to do. They want to silence us. They want to marginalize us. They want us to go away. And you talk about a person that not only can take it, but dish it out. That's what Donald Trump does. That's why he's a threat. And thank goodness that the Attorney General is going to investigate the Russian collusion delusion, the obstruction function junction. Compare that to what Joe Biden's kid? Come on. We have to take back our country, and we have to take back our state. Thank you for joining us. May God bless you and your family. Outstanding job, as always, by our great friend Ray Amaya. God bless everybody. Keep the faith.